We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. We have draft show number 4 for you. So today, what we're doing is a whole bunch of stuff. We're going through just the overall draft assessment, kind of just revisiting some of these picks. Now that we've kind of had a couple days to kind of look it over, see the whole picture of what the Bears were trying to do, just kind of review that and just see how we kind of feel about it. And then also give out a draft grade, go through some of the UDFAs, and then also just kind of see where does this current roster even stand. Talk about the salary cap, talk about running backs, defensive ends, free agents that we might want to be bringing in if we can bring in a free agent as well because of the salary cap situation. So we're gonna have it all out there for you. What is good, Shy Drax? I see you out there. And yes, to all the Hyppolites, out there of the Midway. So also, just as a friendly reminder too, if you did not know, we have a free draft guide for everybody that's out there. Make sure to download it. It's absolutely free. You can see all the different details that are in there as well. So probably good for the next couple days as we kind of continue to go through these. Usually during the year too, I like to kind of create like player profiles as well for the roster, just so we kind of know a little bit more about the team too. So be on the lookout for that as well. So yeah, what's good? I see Rob out there. I see Joe out there. Joe, thanks again for sending over some of that information with some of the draft stuff. So shout out to Joe. I have a couple draft bits that we're going to start talking about when we start getting into the draft grades, because I'm not just going to be talking about my thoughts, but also get into the data behind it a little bit more. And then, yeah, draft grade is, wait, what? Yeah. So I actually want to first off starting to talk about draft assessments and draft grades, because I actually think that this is pretty darn important. Because I know that there's a lot of people out there that say draft grades aren't important. Actually, my dad even sent me something about draft grades because he knew I was going to do a draft grade show today officially. And he sent me the whole Seahawks piece where, if you haven't seen this, the Seahawks historically had an F grade when they got like Russell Wilson, they got Bobby Wagner, and it was like one of the best drafts, but it got an F grade. And I want to just throw this out there because there is a big difference between draft grades and like the draft class grade, like what happened, the production of it, like 3 years down the road. And I think that the big difference between this is I think a lot of times people see draft grades as it's good, right? Like these players are 100% going to be good. And when you really think about what a draft grade is it's really how did the team do compared to consensus? Like the best way to put this is we literally call it draft capital. So it's as if like draft capital, I give you $10,000. Each team gets $10,000. And it's, well, how are you going to invest that? What players are you going to invest in? What stocks are you going to invest in? Now, if some team is throwing all their money into some meme coin that's out there, they might be the richest after 3 years, but you go, why are you doing it that way, right? Like the draft grade might be bad, but maybe at the end of the 3 years, maybe it works out. Really, all we're doing is we're kind of grading the investments and saying, as a consensus, right? Did we work the boards well? Did we invest well in certain spots and not? So you'll see later on when I get into the draft grade, it's not just going to be, do I like these picks? But it's going to be really focused on just where did we draft people compared to consensus and how much does that actually weigh into this? Because that's how I think that draft grade should be created. I think draft grade should be just automated. Like, how are you compared to consensus? Because that's really what we're basing it off of. You know, you could base it off of your own boards, but that's really it. And yes, I know for probably a commenter out there that says, well, everyone has their own boards. Exactly. That's why we're going with consensus. You know, that's why we're doing it this way. Otherwise, every team would get an A on their own draft boards. So let's see what's out there in the comments before we get into the true draft assessment. Shadrach saying A, because I believe in Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson. And Ron saying, yeah, Bears with a big fat F. So we got the 2 opposites. Yeah, completely out there. So let's get into this. So we've broken down a lot of the players out there. So let's just go with the first pick, Colston Loveland out of Michigan, 6'6", 248. And yet again, I'm going to really focus in on the consensus, right? On the mock draft database consensus, he was the 15th overall player, and Arif Hassan's consensus ratings, he was 12th. We picked him at 10. Honestly, not bad, right? When you're just purely talking about that. Now, so from a consensus perspective, middle of the road, technically a quote unquote reach, but it's right there, right? It's not a big deal when you're talking about this. It's more than now the human side comes into this, right? What do we think about Colston Loveland? And quite frankly, the more that I think about this, the more I like this pick just because of just really the role that Colston Loveland can play for the Chicago Bears, being an opposite of Cole Kmet. And just so that we can kind of silence this whole piece of Cole Kmet leaving the Bears, if he does, holy cow. But really, 47% of the snaps of Ben Johnson, with the Lions, ran two tight end personnel. They like running out two tight ends, and truly, this is like a starter. So for me, I like it. You just add an extra layer of depth. Injuries also happen as well, and it's just good insurance to add something like this that's out there. So I'm not going to grade like each individual pick, but I really, really like the first two picks that they have because, yes, I was wanting Tyler Warren, and when I thought about it after I gave my initial reactions, I wanted Colston Loveland over some of the defensive linemen. I was not a huge fan of a lot of the defensive linemen that were available. So to me, I like that they at least went with Colston Loveland because honestly, thinking about it, that was probably my second choice next to I wanted Warren first. They go Loveland. So to me, I like it. I really do like this. And I also got a text from my friend who is a Lions fan, Michigan fan. And he's like, man, Colston Loveland, he's good. And he just told me, he's like, anytime that they needed him at Michigan, he was just someone that they could rely on, just a reliable target. And to me, you just get a different style of tight end in the room. I like it. I really do like the pick. And I don't think you could be super critical because when people are saying you need offensive line, there was no tackles there. When you need defensive line, a lot of the defensive prospects were all projects, and those don't necessarily hit. So to me, I really like the pick of Colston Loveland. Final answer, lock it in. I wasn't super critical when we had it, but I like it. Yeah, I really do like it. And then going on to my favorite pick that we made was Luther Burden. I jumped up for joy. He was the number 30. We had him at pick 39. He is the Arif Hassan's consensus number 29 player, and also the consensus from Mock Draft Database at 36. So no matter how you slice it, this was a good value, best player available. And like what we've talked about, this guy was literally wide receiver 1 last year. And, wide receiver 1 last year of the class, right? Not compared to like Marvin Harrison Jr. or anything like that. But he was the number 1 that people were saying in summer coming out, just had a down year. And the thing that a lot of people are nervous about with Luther Burden is the character piece of it. And because the talent is there, the yak, the yards after the catch, number 1 in missed tackles. On 61 receptions, he broke 30 tackles. That's insane. A 50% clip of broken tackle to reception ratio. That is crazy. And here's the thing with Luther Burden as well is, to me, you just get another playmaker, someone that you can just give the ball to. Also, you saw the work ethic. He did not get drafted in the first. What does he do? He goes out there, jugs machine, has his girlfriend, shooting balls at him out of the jugs machine. And then also too, the thing that really stands out is I think it was either Ryan Poles or Ben Johnson that said this, that the reason why they like Luther Burden so much is because they spoke to his head coach, and his head coach told him how big of a worker and how great of a teammate he was. And that's coming from the head coach. Now, there's a lot of behind the scenes discussions, like one-on-one private conversations. And the fact that that people out there are saying Luther Burden, questions about how big of a worker he was and everything like that. But the head coach has Luther Burden's back in a private scenario, right? This isn't public coach speak. This is a one-on-one conversation. So the fact that he got the coach's blessing, I think really puts a lot of the rumors about him being a bad teammate at ease. Now, I still feel like he's got that DJ Moore-esque of on and off the field of what type of a player he is. But I just really like the guy. He's so incredibly talented, and I stick with the A rating. And I think if you're looking at these two picks, what they do for the Bears and what they do for this offense, and also with the people that are there, both combined is an A, in my opinion, because yeah, you would like to have Warren, but we're not making every single pick that's out there. It's good picks, both for those first two selections. Also, I see Joe out there saying, Brad, Ben said he wasn't going to drop the Lions playbook in Chicago, but his picks and wanted to go under center plus 12 personnel says otherwise. I agree. I think like part of it when he was saying that we're getting rid of the playbook, I think in the same vein, it's like, yeah, but you're going to bring a lot with it, right? It's not the exact same, but yeah, you better believe there's going to be a lot out there too. And yeah, he does really like running some of those two tight end sets. But the biggest concern though that I have with adding these, and it's like with us Bears fans, every time we get a new offensive coordinator, like with Luke Getsy, we're like, man, we can add him, but he might be a head coach, right? And we add Shane Waldron. This is great, but he might be a head coach next year, right? With our wide receivers and tight ends, the only fear that I have is, will they get enough targets? Because that's kind of where Luther Burden's frustration came from, was not being targeted enough. And DJ Moore was frustrated because he wasn't being targeted when he was open. So I just want to make sure that everyone's egos are in check with everything out there. So that's my feeling. Also, Oracle of Hallis, I did not thank you for the super chat because it was right at the end. Thank you so much for that. That meant a lot, like 2 shows ago. So thank you so much, my friend. But Oracle of Hallis is saying ball in hands, A+, ball in the air, A-, route running, C. I like that assessment. And yeah, especially when he knows he's not the primary read. I do feel he's got some of that Anthony Miller to his game for sure, but tremendously talented. So now let's go over to the next pieces about this Chicago Bears draft. And the next pieces out there is Ozzy Trapilo. Now, I think that's some of the big negatives with this because I've heard people negative on Luther Burden because it's not trenches. And I want to just make this clear. If people are mad about the whole trench not being a trench pick, are you really just mad because we didn't get Ursery? And I think if you're mad about not getting Ursery, be mad that Ryan Poles traded back because he could have had Ursery right there rather than drafting Ozzy Trapilo. But I'll tell you this about Ozzy Trapilo, and I think that because I've seen this graphic out there where it's like, this is what good teams do. And you see Bears drafting Ozzy Trapilo, and then right after that, Tate Ratledge getting drafted. I want to make something very clear. Ozzy Trapilo out of Boston College is a tackle, an offensive tackle, while Ratledge is a guard. That's huge because the Bears need a tackle. They went after a tackle. And the other thing too is after Ozzy Trapilo was drafted, literally, I have not seen anybody else post this. No tackle was drafted for over an entire round. The next one, so Ozzy Trapilo drafted at number 56, then Wylam was drafted at 89. So you could clearly see that there was a giant split of offensive tackle talent that after Trapilo, it just dropped off. And I want to just really kind of clear that up because Trapilo, even though he was projected to go in the 3rd, and you look at the overall scores, right? Mock draft database consensus is number 85 and Arif Hassan's is number 78. But really you saw tackles going fast. But after Ozzy was drafted, no one picked up a offensive tackle for the next 33 picks. And I think that's at least worth being stated because of how valuable the position of offensive tackle is. So now let's talk a little bit about Ozzy. And the thing with Ozzy is it is a reach. I think that cannot be overstated. The offensive tackles were going fast. Bears wanted an offensive tackle, so they went and they grabbed an offensive tackle. So they reached for need. So they reached for Ozzy Trapilo. But the other piece of this too is Dan Skipper, right? We keep using the term Dan Skipper. This guy is Dan Skipper. This guy is the offensive version of Dan Skipper, where smart, super insanely tall. But the thing that I like about this pick that I've warmed up to is what do we know about Karan Amagaji? Karan Amagaji has all the traits you want in a phenomenal starting tackle. All the traits. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying anything like that. He's crazy athletic. He's got good speed, good power. Also, insanely long arms. He's got all the things that you want in a true stud left tackle. But we saw what happened last season. He has the potential to be an absolute, he cannot do anything for this team. But Ozzy is a very high floor player. And what the Bears need right now is we saw this last year. Now, I'm not saying Larry Borum is a crazy good offensive tackle, but when Karan was out there, it was awful. But when Larry Borum was out there, it was slightly better. And I think that the biggest piece is with Ozzy. Ozzy gives you that floor of just being a swing tackle. To me, Ozzy Trapilo is a perfect swing tackle, that perfect Dan Skipper that you want in this class. And if you told me that, and if you look then from 100 feet away and you say, we're drafting a swing tackle with a second round pick, that doesn't look good, right? It's still a reach, but I like it for the sense of the team, right? So it's still a little on the negative side because you reached, but at the same time, it's a need that they really needed to fill. Because now Karan, you can see what you have with them. Because you might have an absolute stud. We have not seen this guy have a full offseason, and it's unfair to count the guy out because he missed the entire offseason, and he's coming from Yale. He's coming from a small-time program. So I really want to see what he has, but Ozzy gives you a little bit more runway. And exactly, you're going to have more of the training camp battles. And Poles talked a little bit about this. I think it was Poles or Johnson talked about it today, where Trapilo can be a right tackle. He can be a left tackle. And I think what you really have to see is what's the health of Braxton Jones? And also, where do you want these people to play? Trapilo played better at right tackle. And I think that when you also think about, the left side, that's where Karan was playing. So what do you have with Karan? If not, like I said, Ozzy's probably just a safe bet for being okay, especially since very good in pass protection, did not let up many sacks, only 2 sacks last season. Just very good when it comes to that. Good hands and just has all the traits that you want out of a tackle. So when we drafted him, I went into a little bit more depth, but right now, like I was saying, I really want to kind of focus more on the team building and kind of the ideas that they had with this. But really, Ozzy Trapilo is someone that, reach, but good. It fills a need of some sort. So now let's go to the next, which is Shemar Turner, Texas A&M, 6'3", 290. Like I've said before, reminds me of Lamar Houston. We picked him up at pick 62. And mock draft database consensus is number 82, and Arif Hassan's consensus is number 84. So yet again, another reach. And this to me is the most critical one because there was a lot of other defensive tackles that were available. It's not like the offensive tackle spot where it was Trapilo and then everybody else, right? Shemar Turner, there's a lot of other defensive tackles, and the Bears really went with traits. Now, the other question too is where are we putting Shemar Turner? Because when you look at Arif Hassan's consensus board, this is technically the number 1 5 technique in the entire draft according to his board. If you're looking for a 5 tech, that's Shemar Turner. So maybe they are, because the biggest thing with Shemar Turner is I want to see where they line him up. And I really want to focus in on this. Him as a D tackle, to me, is not great, right? He's not been a great D tackle. He's good when he's just one gapping and has one person to beat. And quite frankly, last season, he was really good. I mean, not this season, but the season before that, he was really good. And he was playing defensive end. Then he adds weight, plays D tackle. I would love to see him be more of a defensive end. And I feel like we haven't heard any confirmation about where exactly he wants to play. If they see him as more of that outside, more of that D end, I really like it. More of that 5 tech, right? I like him as more of a defensive end than an actual defensive tackle. If this is a defensive end, I like it more. If this is a D tackle, I'm skeptical. I'm a little skeptical, but this is the thing with tweeners. You can't be right in the middle. You have to choose one side or the next. But really with Shemar Turner, you have to refine him a little bit more, but really has a lot of good potential, but still a reach. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about too is also where someone's being forecasted. Shemar Turner was also being forecasted at pick number 69. Now, this is the big thing that I want to bring up is that there's a difference between big boards, right? Big boards were saying, hey, he's out there in the 80s, but the forecast was for people were forecasting him to go at pick 69. So when you look at that, it's not as big of a reach than what some people think, but still a reach nonetheless. And just for those that are curious, Ozzy Trapilo's was his forecasted was more, or with forecasters, he was more so in 70s, while evaluators had him more in the 79s. Now, a big difference between this, forecasters usually build their big boards based on where people think that they're going. So with Trapilo, a little bit better with that, but still reaches nonetheless. Also, Joe's saying he heard he was going to be D tackle. Dang, I'm hoping they switch that up. Hopefully, we know someone from the Bears listens to this show. Put him at D end. That's what I want to see. I want to see him at defensive end. So that's my feeling. But let's see what else is out there. TB17, 0 excuses left. Caleb benched by week 8. Man, I do agree. There's 0 excuses for Caleb though, especially like he's got all the weapons in the world. And quite frankly, if he doesn't do well, yeah, I could see them. It might be a hot take, but yeah, I could see them being like, Ben being like, hey, I don't want this guy. Give me someone else because we have everybody. We have to do something like this. So let's keep on going through some of these players. And then next, everyone's favorite name to say, but probably everyone's least favorite pick, myself included. No offense to the Hyppolites that are out there. But Ruben Hyppolite out of Maryland, pick number 132. Arif Hassan's consensus is that this guy's undrafted. And the mock draft database consensus was this guy was number 361 overall. And this keeps on going to this, right? And I know a couple of you asked, would he be a safety? This guy is a linebacker through and through, even though he's crazy speed, crazy athletic. This still just screams to me like we're drafting a special teamer in the 4th round. I still just don't like it, right? Like there's a lot of linebackers that have special teams experience, but also a lot higher of a floor of being a linebacker. And that's where I just don't necessarily love it. He is very quick, or very speedy, which is awesome, but this is we're talking about the investments, crypto, you have like standard stocks, ETFs and stuff that, when there's not tariff wars going on, it's usually a pretty good investment. But with all that, but then you have crypto and crypto, if like one of your friends made a bunch of money on crypto, you'd be like, dude, shut up. Like, come on, shut up. But that's Ruben Hyppolite. Like these high, like, what do they become? This is where it's the difference between the draft grades and the class grades. If Ruben Hyppolite becomes amazing, if anyone's negative on him, they should not be ridiculed because it's like, no, this guy was projected to go undrafted and you drafted him in the 4th round. And that's where it's not great. It's not great that you have something like that. But yeah, it's not a good pick, right? It's when you were talking purely about picks, it's not smart. It's not smart to draft someone like that. It's going to be seen as bad. But at the same time, people do in these day 3 go a little bit off the board, off the beaten path. Yeah, not great. Not great there. But also, too, I like what Turner was saying. Dennis Allen said he likes defensive ends around 280. See, that's where I'm like, come on. I'm holding out hope because Turner, I think that he can be a good defensive end. I really, really hope that he ends up doing that, like lose a little bit of that weight. I think he could be a beast. And also, I think that we have more of a need at defensive end than we do at D tackle. But let's see what else is out there. We also, actually, let me go to my next one. And also Hyppolite, like we said, going to be more of a special teamer. Speedy guy, but yeah, we'll also see what we have with Noah Sewell too. Hopefully he actually hits the floor and ends up doing something. But now let's go into Zah Frazier. Spelled Zah, but Zay is the way that you pronounce it. Out of UTSA, redshirt junior. Going to be 25 years old as a rookie. And like we were talking about yesterday on the day 3 show, I won't really repeat a lot of the stuff that we were saying because literally just recorded that show yesterday. With Zay, when you look at the consensus, this was actually a hit that a lot of people were saying when you're looking purely at the draft boards, right? And when you look at it, Mock Draft Database has him at 130. Arif Hassan has him at 155 on the consensus, and we got him at 169. So when you look at it, good pick across the board. Cornerback number 16, cornerback number 18 for Arif Hassan, but was projected to go more so in 188, so a little bit higher than what a lot of forecasters were predicting. Now, my personal take on this is I don't see the high-end traits that you saw with like the other players that are these true, almost like wide receiver builds at that 6'3", at that cornerback position. I see the long speed, but I don't see the short area quickness. And that's where I'm a little skeptical with this. Yet again, it's a project, right? We just went from 2 complete projects where one of them might be amazing. I don't love necessarily the process. Frazier I like a little bit more because it seems everyone else kind of likes him a little bit more with it. So from a draft grade perspective, higher. Me personally, I'm a little bit lower on just from what I was seeing with them overall. And Pendergast has a good point with this. Poles has 1 clown pick a year. This is true. Like, yeah, Sawyer, I believe, was available. And maybe when they traded back, he wasn't. I can't remember. But yeah, that's the thing. I'm like, man, I know that Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State probably wasn't going to be like a superstar. But man, if he just gives you like Sam Hubbard play, that ain't bad at all. But no, I agree. And then if we go to the next, probably my favorite pick. Actually, this is probably my favorite pick. It's 2026 4th round pick for next year. I had to make my own profile for him, which the pick from the LA Rams. I actually think that when people do draft grades, they should add the picks that they get or lose from the next year. I firmly believe that, because when people do draft grades and it's like for the Atlanta Falcons, they gave up their 1st round pick next year. So they should not, that should be factored into their actual draft grades. And I do believe that 2026 4th round pick should be factored into the Bears grading, where you walked away with a pick next year. And I do think that should be accounted for. I really like that they added this, because now you kind of have a pick 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round, and you could do something with it, right? We know that our picks have been Tyler Scott, Roschon Johnson, and Torrey Taylor, but also we like to trade away these 4th round picks as well. So that's why, to me, I wanted to call this out, because I really like that we at least walked away with a 2026 4th round pick. And then if anyone's reading this, these are just jokes that are out there as well. So it's not, don't take it too seriously or too literally with some of these things. Like, for example, hopefully not someone projected to go undrafted like we had this year. But let's keep on going with the next pick, which was Luke Newman, Michigan State guard / center. Now, chat, keep me honest. Did we hear anything about him potentially being center? Because I've heard some stuff, but I don't know if they've specifically called out center or not. But he played some center at the Shrine Bowl, and that's why a lot of people are saying, okay, this guy can be a left guard, this guy can be a center. That versatility I do like. I've also heard people like Steve Palazzolo, who formerly a PFF, really likes Luke Newman. A lot of it is the quickness, the foot speed, and also coming over from Holy Cross has a lot of potential. So this could be a pretty good pick down the road. Like, this might be that one pick where we go, he's undrafted, so everybody hates the pick, but then he ends up just being a solid contributor. So this could end up being, out of the 2 undrafteds, this could be that guy. This could be that guy that actually does something with it. But you got the guard and center versatility. And the thing too that I want to call out, if they want someone that has that guard center versatility, there really wasn't a lot of people that were out there. They were usually just pure guards, or a lot of the centers like a Jake Majors, they're just centers. Like, there really wasn't a lot of guard center combos that were out there like what you could have with Newman. So still, when I factor this in, you did draft somebody that could have been undrafted. Still not absolutely in love with the pick, especially when you don't want to see what else is out there, but you have to factor that in. There was a lot of really, 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 really good players that are out there. Yet again, kind of drafting more so for need rather than how the board falls to you, which I have a very interesting graphic that I'll show, and then I'll try to verbally describe it to the audio only listeners. But next little pick and the last pick, the greatest pick of all time, Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers, 5'8", 211. And, you know, I've sung his praises. I really like this guy. The biggest negative, the biggest downside is we're going to see how valuable athletic traits are. He's the same size. He's the same size as Ashton Genty, but Ashton Genty was significantly faster. He was significantly stronger. And Monangai, though, his biggest superpower is his legs just keep on going. Like, no matter what, his legs are always going one direction, even though his body's getting contorted in different areas. That's what he does. So that's going to be the biggest question, is how important is those athletic traits? Because his RAS score was actually like a 4. So this to me is the big one. This to me is definitely the biggest piece that's out there with Monangai. But when we look at the consensus boards, yet again, I really like this player. And you look at it, we picked him 233, and the mock draft database consensus was 210. And also at 190, he ended up being at 233. So that pretty darn good, right? A lot of people really, really liked him. And then also when you look too at Luke Newman, because I didn't say this, consensus was 355 for mock draft database, and Arif Hassan's was projected to go undrafted. But let's see what y'all are saying out there with these picks before we get into the actual grade. We'll see what y'all are saying. Let's see here. Oracle of Hal is saying, bold prediction, this pick is going to turn into Najee Harris. It could. Poles is going to trade that fourth for a player, says Joe. I do agree. Pendergast is saying, I stand corrected. Devin Neal from Kansas. Then other pieces too. Rockman saying he's an all-arounder. Melon Smasher saying, sell the team. Seriously, this draft was unacceptable. This is a clown show. Yeah. And then I'm Farius. Let's see. We have Newman played well against Michigan Wolverines defense. He did. He had a pretty good game with that. I do need to watch more of him though. And then Melon is saying draft should have been 10. Tyler Booker. I disagree with Tyler Booker. I've never understood the Tyler Booker pick just because the guard position, I don't see it, especially since I think even Ryan Poles said the next priority was to extend Joe Thuney. So yeah, Booker I disagree with, or Zabel, yeah. And then pick 39, Tuimolo or Scorton. I agree with Scorton. Pick 56, Ratledge. I disagree with Ratledge. I still firmly believe, guard should not have been the pick with any of that. Or Mike Green. I definitely agree with Mike Green, but I don't think that the Bears would have ever. That's one of those picks where I love Mike Green, but I know that even though the Bears went outside their comfort zone with some of these picks, I still don't think that they would be like, yeah, probably wouldn't. Pick 62, Landon Jackson. I do agree with that. Wyatt Milam is interesting just because could be a guard. I liked Xavier Watts for 62 as well. So I definitely like that as well. But let's see what else is there. Let's see. Yeah, let's keep on going. Let's just keep on going overall. But let's go into the draft grades. So draft grades, like I said, I want to kind of show y'all some graphics about this because a lot of what I have to say, right? My belief in the draft grade is it's not necessarily saying that draft grades it's absolute trash. It's, everyone's going to be great. Everyone's going to be bad. It's really should be like, think about it. What should a draft grade encompass, right? It's the whole idea of process versus results. 3 years down the road, we focus on results. Right now, we focus on the actual process of the draft. And if we look at a lot of different data points out there that'll kind of showcase, when you look at what draft classes had a lot more value picks versus reaches, this is something that said based on draft capital over expected. So expected capital based to be used on player versus actual used. Bears were one of the worst. We were 24th, actually. 24th, which is not good. But what was good was the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings were all worse than us. So way to go for the NFC North for being just overall with consensus picking people that shouldn't have been there the whole time. So that is something that's out there. Also, Skokes, what's good, my friend? I also saw Jeremy out there. Got lots of people out there. Love it. Love it. Make sure to hit that like button. But as I go through this, right, it just shows what this graphic shows is, yes, the Bears reached. And we talked about this. Like, we were literally just talking about this. Bears were reaching a little bit more than expected. And this is probably my favorite graphic that's out there, which is talking about steals versus reaches and what the Bears are doing. And the reason why I like this, this is the reason why I like it so much, is because it really does describe what we're talking about with the Bears draft class. Because in this top left-hand side, we have combining fallers and reaches. So what this means is we have the value lost from reaches, and we also have the value gained from fallers. And where the Bears sit is that we did a lot of reaches, which we were just talking about. We reached a lot for a lot of players, but we were also above average with drafting fallers, like we talked about with some of these picks that we had. And I think this perfectly sums up the Bears draft class, why we feel so weird about a lot of this stuff. Because the whole feeling of this is that the Bears reached for a lot of players, and we also selected some people that fell to us. There was like no one really in between, as we were talking about, besides really like our first pick. Everything else was a reach or drafting a faller. And I think that just kind of perfectly sums up this Bears draft class, where we really did just kind of pick certain people out. And quite frankly, my whole thing that I feel about this is, like I've said, I'm not saying that this draft class is awful, but I am saying that this is probably the worst draft class that Ryan Poles has done. I have liked the way that Ryan Poles historically has attacked the draft. I liked that you would usually trade back, and you would usually get very good value for those trade backs. I don't think that this is his finest hour. I didn't necessarily love it. I felt like towards the end, it just felt like he kind of lost what he wanted to do with the draft. And that's fine. It's fine to say that. Like, I think that he had a bad, I don't think that this was his best draft. And I think that this is more on the C, D, I'll give it a C, a D. Like, I thought that, but it doesn't mean it sucks or it's going to suck. I like the first top heavy. If I'm way at top heavy, I'll give it a C, right? I just felt like towards the end, I just felt like he didn't really know what he was doing. And I know some people might not want to hear that, and they just wanted me to shake the pom-poms. But we talked about how many reaches that he did have. And it's not great, and if you ever are like, well, why does Brad feel this way? Go through and, to me, just go through and look at some other people's draft classes. And I think that that's just all it is. But seriously, the thing that I like about this, right, because people want draft grades, I just can't wait to see Luther Burden out there. I can't wait to see some offensive line battles out there. I can't wait to see Colston Loveland out there. And that's the thing that's exciting, right? We are not GMs. We are fans. We just want to see our team do well. We want to see it be awesome. And even though I'm not as happy about this draft, who cares? Let's move on. Let's watch the Bears and let's have fun with this. So let's get into this and go. Yeah. And also, I forgot to say this. So, Taco Man, I purposely poured myself a drink so we can say, yeah, it was a gross draft. Takes a sip of beer, puts it down, and that's it. Like, I didn't love it. And that's fine. So now let's move on. Let's turn the page and let's talk about the Bears draft. Let's continue to talk more about this Bears team, right? Because we got a couple good key decision makers good key difference makers at the very beginning of this draft. And when we look at the Bears, I like this. Oh man, do I have the credit for, oh man, I forgot who actually created this. Every year someone creates this graphic and I love it. It just kind of shows all the best teams that are out there. So let's get into this as we go out to the Bears, where the Bears are listed as let me just line up my eyes, the 8th best team when you look across the board at their team overall. Now, their weakest positions: edge, defensive tackle, running back, and quarterback. And I agree with them on that, because edge, yeah, we have Dioa Dangbo and Montez Sweat, and not necessarily too much behind that. Austin Booker, we still want him to do something, build out. That's why I'm hoping Shemar Turner more so as a defensive end than anything else. And then also at the quarterbacks, at running backs, I gotta talk about that, right? Caleb needs to produce. We know that. So I think 5 is a very fair assessment. And then running backs, we saw what Swift did last season, and that's it. So let's keep on going too. And also, actually, before this, I want to read some of the comments just because I went on my I went through this, and yeah, I agree. About what you didn't like is going to accomplish what exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there we go. Looking through some of the comments. Yeah. So let's keep on going through. Yeah. And let's keep on going through with this. And I think that the biggest thing too is just because when you look at the draft, it's not the greatest, for like grades, does not mean it's going to be a bad draft. I think that's the biggest piece with all of this. And also, like I said, love the picks up top. The first 2 picks. So let's keep on going through like some of these other little players. So UDFAs. So when we go down to UDFAs, some of the people that we ended up adding. Now, I want to see kind of how this shakes up, what kind of talk goes on with some of the mini camps and other things that are going out there. But if we go into the other pieces with UDFAs that have been signed, we have Jade Walker from Texas A&M, who is, so we have 2 wide receivers, both around the consensus 400s, right? Jade Walker, JP Richardson, Jade Walker from Texas A&M, JP Richardson from TCU. So a couple wide receivers to at least just try out. I think they're going to be more so preseason people that we start to see. Edges, Xavier Carlton from California is the only one that's actually on the consensus big board at 394. And then also Power Eccles, right around where Hyppolite was from North Carolina at 390. But then also to Major Burns, best name out there, LSU 443 or 443 errors. But then also safety Tysheem Johnson out of Oregon, 400 on the consensus board. But also the other 2 big pieces, Luke Elkin out of Iowa, the long snapper, and kicker Jonathan Kim, Michigan State. So those are the 2 people that I've really wanted to kind of call out as also, hey, I like that they brought in a long snapper. I like that they brought in a kicker, especially too with this new regime. Even though we still have the same special teams coordinator, you got to turn up the heat a little bit, see what you got with this. I like that they brought those guys in. UDFA tryouts, guard Sebastian Paris out of Eastern Illinois, edge Cole Nelson out of Virginia Tech, and linebacker Michael Batten out of Houston. So not much to really kind of talk about. I like that they brought in a couple little safeties. I think they're going to be more so just preseason people to just kind of add some depth. Power Eccles actually has a valid point to potentially, he's going to be the guy to kind of like keep an eye out for because I think that he can battle for some of these, the linebacker spots. And then obviously the special teams with the long snapper and the kick. We're not really going to be watching it, but it's at least something to keep an eye out for. But let's see. Let's see what else we got out there. So we have UDFA. So now let's just look at the overall, just the state of the roster. Is if we look at the state of the roster, the thing that this draft did very well, and this is why I think you see a lot of those reaches, is we wanted to fill out this roster. You saw us go with a wide receiver. So now our starters, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Luther Burden, with backups, Devin Duvernay, Tyler Scott, Alameda Zacchaeus, and also with Miles Boykin as another backup. Pretty darn good. Do not mind that at all. And then offensive line, this is from our lads. Ozzy Trapilo, to me, should be a right tackle. Karan Amagaji, left tackle. So just flip those guys. But really, you look at this offensive line and you feel pretty solid because you have Braxton Jones, Joe Tooney, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson, Darnell Wright with Ozzy Trapilo, Luke Newman, Doug Kramer, Ryan Bates, and Karan Amagaji. Now, the thing that I kind of question is if Luke Newman becomes your center and Bill Murray then is that left guard. So that to me is something that I feel like we're going to see that's out there. But then also too, with the tight ends, Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet. I think it's funny that they put Loveland as the starter over Cole Kmet. But then Durham Smythe. And I want to bring this up too. Durham Smythe is a very he should be tight end number 3. He should not be tight end 2. So I like that he's at least the tight end 3. Stephen Carlson out there too. So also too, let me just read what we got. Did Allen sign anywhere? No, I still think Keenan's unsigned. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be out there. So let's see what else. Yeah, y'all are going back and forth in the comments. But also at quarterback, yeah, we got Caleb. Yeah, quarterback set. Running back though we might want to add someone. We have DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Kyle Monangai, Travis Homer, and Ian Wheeler. So I think a lot of people are talking about, would the Bears actually sign someone at the running back position? And then we flip over to the defense. Your defensive backfield looks good. If you look at the safeties, Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard, Elijah Hicks, Jonathan Owens, Tarvarius Moore, and then now Major Burns. And I think when you look at the secondary, you don't feel like you need to really add anybody, because the biggest negative with the safeties is that they're all on 1-year deals. Then you go to the corners, Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon. Kyler Gordon's backup, Josh Blackwell, just signed that big deal. He's going to stay. You're good at slot. Then you have Terrell Smith, good backup for Tyreek Stevenson. And then you have Zah Frazier, who's going to be being developed. I think you're good at the entire secondary. But then when you go over to the linebackers, TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, Amen Abugbamiga, Ruben Hyppolite, Carl Jones, Noah Sewell. This is where maybe they add another I think that this is just going to be kind of a little bit mini battle. But when you go to the defensive line, this is where I think you could add someone. Not at D tackle, depends on where Shemar Turner ends up playing, which, as chat was saying, seems like he's going to be a D tackle. As at D tackle, you have Javon Dexter, Grady Jarrett, Andrew Billings, Shemar Turner, Chris Williams, who signed, I think it was like a $3 million deal this year, followed also with Zach Pickens, and Jonathan Ford played pretty darn well for the Bears at the tail end. So I feel like in that D tackle room, I feel pretty darn comfortable with what you have right there. Not saying it's going to be amazing or incredible, but I don't think you're going to be going out and purposely trying to add anybody. So you go to the defensive ends, Montez Sweat and Adayo Adengbo as your starters. Then the backups. You have Austin Booker, who you're hoping kind of takes the next step, and Daniel Hardy, who was not too great. And I think that's why, to me, it just feels like these defensive ends are going to be more of the question mark. You have Dominique Robinson, Jamari Croma. I think that's why I'm also really hoping Shemar Turner becomes a defensive end. And I think that's also why you see a lot of Bears fans not necessarily love a lot what we had with the draft, where we go, hey, like we were talking about with Jack Sawyer. Hey, Jack Sawyer, he was on the board. Also my boy Brayton Swinson, who, yeah, a little bit smaller, but still a lot of these guys, I feel like you could have had at least a defensive end. So this leads us, so we had current roster. This leads us to agency, because we just talked about the draft. We just kind of gave out those draft grades, but I want this to be a super show. We got to talk about the salary cap, where that's going to be at, and then also talk a little bit about the free agents that are out there. And also, Shy Drax, thank you so much. Great idea. Everybody, make sure to hit the like button to help out this show. Helps out tremendously. And also, we got a comment. Thankfully, Chris Williams' contract is not guaranteed. Agreed. That's actually a very good point. We can cut him. It's $3 million, but we can move on from him if we would like to do that. But let's go into the salary cap, where yet again, salary cap is not an exact math just because we don't have the exact numbers. I'm pulling all my numbers from Spot Rack. So the rookie salaries, it's going to be a total cap hit of $13.289 when you factor in all the cap from those salaries. But also, we added 8 players. So in theory, you would then get rid of 8. So rough math, you would probably be saving around $8 million. So if you go to, well, how much do we have right now? Because the contracts have not been signed. So if you look at the actual contract itself, did I actually take a picture of this? Yes, I did. Right now, currently, we have $11.5 million. So you then subtract 8. You subtract, what is it? So you subtract 8 to the $13 million for the rookie salary cap. You get $5 million that you subtract. And you're probably going to get, around $6 million, a little over $6 million that you'll have in cap space. It'll probably be a little bit higher just because it's not just exactly $1 million a piece. So it'll be a little bit more than that, probably around that $8 million range. So with that rough math, you have about $8 million after you sign all your rookies. Now, that's not necessarily enough to go and sign a big free agent. You can still move salary cap around and do other things like that to just kind of move out some of that cap space and other pieces in that aspect, right? So it's not absolutely set that way. But if the Bears want to bring in a free agent, right, we don't have all this cap space to go out and do that. But if we wanted to bring in some different positions, there's two positions that people are talking about. And one of those is running back. Now, from a free agent running back perspective, who's out there? Let me just get my slides right. We have Jamal Williams, which I still feel like if the Bears want to get somebody, I think you have to assess where Roschon Johnson's at, because Jamal Williams more that power type of a guy. You have to see where Roschon's at. Where is he at from a concussion perspective? If not, maybe you bring in Jamal. Also, you got to see what you got with the future Isaiah Pacheco and Kyle Monangai. But other running backs that are out there, Gus Edwards, Nick Chubb, Cam Akers, Jeff Wilson, Naheem Hines, Amir Abdullah, J.K. Dobbins, and Chase Edmonds. Now, the big reason why all these guys are free agents is because a lot of these guys, unfortunately, have gotten an injury. So Nick Chubb's the fun name to throw out there. But yeah, I agree with Oracle. Nick Chubb, if he wasn't washed, I do think that Nick Chubb is pretty washed right now. Like, unfortunately, he was so good, and it just felt like injuries has finally come up to him. He's the biggest name, but he's not the same. Same thing with Cam Akers. Cam Akers, I just felt was not the same. J.K. Dobbins, it's just kind of a similar piece as well. So with this, I think it's only if you absolutely need it. That's my feeling. That's my feeling with it. Otherwise, you're going to have to trade for somebody. And I just don't necessarily love the idea of trading for a running back, just because if you trade for a running back, probably means then you have to sign it. I'm done with the whole Brian Poles trading for someone and only having it be like a 1-year deal. So to me, if you're trading for someone, I don't like it at the running back position. I'd rather have that at defensive end or another position of value rather than just the running back piece. But then if we continue going over to the defensive ends, because I do actually agree with Bears fan, because I think overall, I think that the roster's pretty much set. And I do agree, because you look at the salary cap, it feels like it's all kind of set in stone. Because if we wanted to add someone, I look at defensive end, but usually they go for like a pretty penny. But there's some pretty good defensive ends out there. There's Von Miller, there's Matt Judon, there's Preston Smith, there's a Darius Smith who played for the Lions, Manuel Ogba, Jerry Hughes, Shaquille Barrett, which I think it's like he was retired, came back. I lost track of it, just threw him out there because he was on the list. Carl Lawson, Tyus Bowser. I added Tyus Bowser because I've always wanted a Bears jersey that said the name Bowser on it. I'm a big Mario fan, so nothing to do with his actual play. I just want a Bowser jersey. And then also James Houston, just because former Lion. That's right. That is the James Houston that was on the Lions, that when he was a rookie, people were like, how did we miss this guy? And then he just stopped being good. He got cut, went over to the Browns, did nothing. And then also I put DeMarcus Walker out there because he's still unsigned. But yeah, very unlikely that he's actually going to be signed, with this. So that's my overall, do I think they signed someone? No, because I don't think we don't really, like we said, we don't really have a lot of money there that's available. You could sign a running back probably for like a 2-year deal. I mean, a $2 million deal. Defensive ends come at a more premium price. If you could, awesome. Maybe Matt Judon, just because he had such a bad year that maybe maybe he just signs for a smaller deal. But I don't really see us adding anybody for real. Unless they, because I also don't see, I don't think Ryan Poles has ever moved money down the road. It just doesn't seem like a very Ryan Polesy move. So I think we're going to keep this. And I think that, and also Rob, thank you so much, saying Ogba just was re-signed. Thank you so much for that. So Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you think they'll actually add someone? Also, what do you think of the draft grade overall? What y'all are saying is we have A, 22% of y'all saying A, 57% saying B, 17% saying C, and 3% saying D to F. And for those that are watching this later on, let me know what you think down below in the comments, right? Everyone's entitled to their opinions with this. Like I said, I'm lower on it just because I felt like there was a lot of better players, and it wasn't Ryan Poles' finest hour, and that's fine, right? Everyone has bad days. You might have a bad project that you're on that you just weren't yourself with. I've liked a lot of Ryan Poles' drafts. It's just not my favorite. But still, the thing that is my favorite is I can't wait to see this offense with all these new weapons. And if you're excited for that, hit that like button out there. Also, hit the subscribe button so you do not miss a show. I'm still figuring out when we can do an all 22 review of Colston Loveland just to kind of see what he's got out there. So let me know what you think. And with that, I'll say some gross. So cheers, everybody. And Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and